a really big issue that organisations need to address. Organisations are leaking lots of brilliant people because they are looking for development that they're not getting in their current company.
I'm so excited to have Helen Tupper here from Amazing If /Squiggly / You Coach You / everything. No, we're absolutely delighted. I'm glad that we're going to take this time. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to get to talk to you on your podcast.
Oh, I'm delighted. And you're going to talk to us around the theme of Squiggly Manager. And I suspect some people are going to be listening, what the heck is a Squiggly Manager? So let's start there. Helen, why don't you tell us a little bit about what this term squiggly means in your context?
So we talk about this idea of squiggly careers as being the way that work and careers are right now. So they're full of change, they're challenging, they're unpredictable, a bit ambiguous. They give people the freedom to develop in different directions and have a career as individual as they are, which all sounds great, right? However, the legacy of the career ladder is pretty strong in structures, in the ways people still think about their development. And so what we're really trying to do in our work, whether it's books and podcasts or the work we do with companies, is lose the ladder because it's holding lots of people back, and we'll talk much more about that, and instead give people the skills and support to succeed in squiggly careers where, they have this ability to develop in different directions and have careers as individual as they are.
Yeah, I love that. And I love this lose the ladder language around that. And yeah, I know when we first met years back when I was with my former company and we were talking about this, I was so inspired by your journey and growing your business. So I'm just delighted. I know you and Sarah run an incredible podcast. So we'll definitely make sure we share more about that to get folks listening, because it's got great stuff in terms of career development. So you talked about losing the ladder, and we've talked about, the changing face of careers. And today specifically, you're going to share some thoughts on what it means to maybe be a squiggly manager, have a squiggly manager mindset. So firstly, tell us a little bit about why is that particularly important to you?
Yeah. So this whole thing about squiggly careers, I think we need to help individuals with the skills, and then we need to make sure that they're supported. And the reason that I think that's important is sort of because of a mistake that I think Sarah and I made, unknowingly, as most mistakes are made. But when we first started our business, we wanted to help individuals. We realised there were certain things that we had done that had helped us in our career development that shouldn't be limited by level, should be accessible to everybody. And we were like, well, we'll take this stuff and we'll create some other stuff where we think there are gaps, and we'll go help individuals. And so we did a couple of years, set up this side project, helped individuals. And then what happened was some of these people started coming back to us and saying, like, I love that course that I went on with you. I love that thing that you did. But, and the but repeatedly was manager related. But I had a conversation with my manager and they still talked to me about career plans, not possibilities. But I had a conversation with my manager about my development, and they talked more about my weaknesses than they did my strengths. And so we realised that there is only so far that you can go by helping individuals develop the skills. If you want to help people succeed, you've got to sort the support out too. And managers are a big, not the only part, there's some structural stuff that needs to change in companies, but managers are a really big part of how we make careers better for everybody. And I don't want to, just stick this all on managers. I think it is hard to be a manager. Managers they've got their own development as well as their day job, and they're helping other people with their careers. So it isn't easy for managers. And that's why I think we have to think more about management as a responsibility and not just a role. In ladder-like careers, we gave managers these jobs because it was another rung on the ladder. Become a manager, become more senior, because that's what the ladder says. And lots of the skills that we now need managers to have, I'm not sure everybody wants to develop. And therefore, maybe everybody shouldn't automatically be a manager. Maybe we should question what the role of the manager really does look like now.
Yeah, I love that you talk about it in terms of responsibility over role. I also love that you noticed as you've been growing your business and helping support individuals, you've actually then looked back at the wider landscape, which has been probably the most fun to watch you and Sarah build this, because you can see how you've evolved to have a greater impact. So it's hats off to you both. And one of the things that you mentioned, we talk about the ladder and sort of a linear career path. In some ways, that would have been a little bit more easier for managers to say, oh, Helen, you're in the company, you're in this role, here's the path, just keep doing what you're doing. it's it's straight down that direction. It's just straight ahead, easy directions. Whereas now, yes, it sounds like from your perspective, certainly from the work that we do, there are a lot more expectations on our managers, and it's more difficult, specifically in this career development space. So that's why I'm absolutely delighted, because you're going to offer your 3 points on how a squiggly manager can kind of adopt the right mindset and take certain actions.
Yes.
Are you ready to rock and roll for your first point?
I'm absolutely ready.
All right. Well, your first point is ask more questions than answer them. I love this one. Tell us more about what this means.
So this is essentially the core of taking a coaching approach, which is what I think we need managers to do. We need to help managers develop this sort of coaching capability. We're not saying that every manager needs to qualify as a coach, but there are certain things that we can learn that can help people to take a coaching approach. And asking more questions than you answer is a really important part of this. So where this comes from, I think, and I've seen this in my own career and lots of people that we've worked with, is that manager mode, if you think about manager mode, not a coach approach, so take these two things, got manager mode and a coach approach. Manager mode, a lot of the time, is about fixing things fast, getting things done, moving on to the next. Nothing particularly wrong with that. That's the reality of lots of people who are in manager mode. Got loads to do, fix it fast, move it on, next thing. The slight challenge is when we take manager mode into a career conversation, you work for me, we're having a career conversation, I'm in manager mode. So you go, Helen, I'm thinking about what I want to do next. And I go, Tony, got a great idea for you. I think you should apply for this job because I fixed it fast. I'm moving on to the next. I'm getting it done. And it's not my career to do. Like it's your career to discuss. And it's just a mode that we get stuck in because the pace of work is so relentless, and very often managers don't have time to press pause to think about, well, who do I need to be in this situation? So they're sort of bringing that manager mode, but all that's happening is they're reducing someone else's accountability. So I'm not really helping you to think things through. I'm just telling you what to do. And also the thing that I think you should do might not be the right thing for you. Like, it can also be a signal of a confidence gremlin too. So lots of people feel validated by giving the right answer. So let's say I work for you, I give you an idea and you go, you work for me, I give you an idea. And you go, oh, great idea, Helen. And that makes me feel good. I'm like, I've got a bit of validation because you work for me and you've made me feel good. So if I take that away, if I don't solve your problem, then what value am I adding? And so actually it's almost like it can often be a signal of what we would talk of as a confidence gremlin, this need to always solve a problem in order to feel good about our impact. But actually, when you take a coaching approach, it's not about solving your problem. It's about supporting you to think it through and solve it for yourself. Yeah. And the benefit of doing that is, twofold really. Maybe more so, you're probably going to come up with better ideas because they come from your head and your context. You're much more committed to your own ideas than you will be to mine, because that's our ego. Like, we love our own ideas. I've just got to get you to come up with them for yourself. But the other thing is, I'm probably going to have a bigger impact on your development over the long term. So even though solving your problem now might make you feel good in the moment, by taking a coaching approach, I'm actually going to have a much more significant impact on your development over the long run. So if we can kind of move away from this immediacy thing of I need to feel good right now, you will actually feel like, I look at some of the careers of the people that I have supported, and by taking a coaching approach, the how I feel now is so much more significant than if I'd just solved a problem for them in the moment.
Yeah, that it is that short term versus long term, isn't it? And we're talking about careers. We're talking about that something that is just inherently forward thinking and takes time, in some ways. And so you're saying kind of the number one skill there, or the number one sort of mindset, is to ask more than sort of tell more.
Yeah, and so there are certain questions that you can, almost have your own coaching questions, I would say. So things like what moves feel motivating to you in the business, Tony? That could be one of my go-to questions. Or what would you like to be true in 12 months' time that isn't true today? Or what does success mean to you in the next 6 months? You can write down, it's basically an open question. It's pretty easy.
I love that last one. What a success! It reminds me of the career development conversations I had actually when I was living in London, and my manager at the time spent so much time in this mindset of kind of go, solve for you, sort of sort of an operational mindset, really, and just in terms of moving forward. I'll never forget the moment that I had, and this is kind of the pain point if managers aren't adopting this squiggly mindset, that this manager was talking to me about kind of the next steps in my career, and we must have spent 1 hour talking about where you go from here, and this is what you do next, and here's what what I'd recommend. And at no stage did they ask me what I actually wanted. And had they stepped back and said, do you see yourself in this career? Even a close-ended question like, do you see yourself doing this in 12 months? The answer would have been a very flat, absolutely not. I'm not necessarily happy in this type of career and I want to move on.
Yeah.
But this manager failed to pause, step back, ask questions. So that's why I know the pain point. And I bet people listening are going, oh, it's so brutal when your manager just talks at you and tries to present the path, which I imagine, Helen, in your experience, I'd be curious, that reflects the manager's kind of career progression. It's kind of a biased mindset of, do this, then that.
Yeah, and I think managers, again, I always try to think from a position of empathy. Managers' jobs are complex, so they're trying to simplify it. But what's simpler than asking questions? You don't have to solve these problems. You just got to get good at asking questions. So what I would suggest to people to do is to first just become a bit more conscious of what this ratio looks like for you. So reflect, if you're a manager, reflect on your conversations that you're having with people in your team and almost think of a ratio. Asking versus answering, what does that ratio look like for you now? 70% of your time is spent answering their questions versus 30% asking. Don't beat yourself up too much. Just reflect on the reality right now. And then try to get a bit better. Go from 30% asking questions to 40%. Just ask 1 or 2 more. And the more conscious you become about this, the more in control of that ratio you'll be. But don't, just get started by focusing on it.
Yeah, I have 2 questions now that you've brought up ratios. 2 questions that I've been dying to ask you for probably months. So I'm kind of glad that I have this forum to do so. The first is, we talk about managers' responsibility in helping their team with their career development. How would you see the split of responsibility? Is it on the team member or the manager in terms of prioritizing career development?
Interesting. Well, I think that no one should care about your career more than you should. I don't think I have an exact number for you, but I think that it's more on the individual than it is the manager. Because any time we make it more about somebody else, we make our development dependent on them. And that introduces a whole load of risk into the situation. So I think it should be more on you than anybody else. However, I don't think it is just about the individual and the manager. I also think it is about the culture and structure that exists in an organization. So let's imagine I'm really keen on my career and you're an amazing manager, which I absolutely know that you are. I still might not succeed in the organization we work with if the structure and culture are not supportive of Squiggly. And that's not just on you and it's not just on me. It's a bigger part of that company. And so I think I am the person in the priority of me and my career progression. And you are probably my biggest supporter in that situation. But there is something going on around us that is also quite important too.
Yeah, what a tremendously broader, more insightful answer than I was expecting. So thank you. Yeah. Okay, my second question that I wanted to ask before I move into your second point was, what is best practice in your view with regards to career development conversations?
Ooh, I love that. So I always think about the difference between a big C and a small C conversation. So I've got loads of factors here. I'm just going to throw in my thoughts on it, Tony. So I think ladder-like approaches to career development look at career conversations with a capital C. So we have a career conversation once or twice a year and everything gets loaded into that moment and tick the box, we've done development. And I don't think that's how it works. I think we need to have a series of small C conversations that happen more continually. So maybe we have a big one, like we sit down 90 minutes, you and me are really talking about careers and we're really invested in that. But that conversation needs to continue because we need to, have I taken progress? Do I need some help? Do I need some support with being connecting? Is it about confidence, taking action? And so I think we need to have generally lots of small C conversations in order for someone to feel confident taking action and not just leave it to moments and a process. But the other thing that I think is really important, the research shows on career conversations, and this is a disconnect between the individual and their managers, that managers think they're having more career conversations with individuals than individuals think they are. So if they're like, oh, managers go, yeah, I have them every month. And the individual goes, I never talk to my manager about my career. And the difference seems to be the one-to-one, okay? The one-to-one seems to be the difference. So managers think if they bring up career in a one-to-one, they've had a career conversation. But for the individual, it needs to be more specific and separate. So it's, Helen, should we just take 20 minutes just to pick up on that career conversation we had last week and see what you're moving forward and what you need support with? It is a specific and separate conversation about my career, not 5 minutes at the end of a one-to-one. And I think that's an interesting gap in managers thinking they're doing it and individuals not feeling like their career development is being supported. But it's quite an easy thing to resolve because it's really about signalling and creating a specific moment to talk about. It doesn't have to be 90 minutes every week. It's just, can we catch up on that career conversation we had last week to see if you need any more support to move things forward? It's that.
Yeah. I love it. All right, let's get into point number 2 then. I'm glad I got those 2 questions off my chest. I was so curious. I think you answered them wonderfully. Oh, they have, because I know you're the expert in the space, and it's been something I've always thought about, and I've gone back and forth. But no, I thought those were really helpful. So point number 2 is around personalizing people's progression. Yeah.
So if you go back to the ladder for a moment, what that ladder says is that progression should look the same for everybody, because it's about becoming more senior. So success on the staircase is about stepping up it. And it says that the same motivation for everybody is about getting to the top. As why do we keep climbing this ladder? Like, what's the point? The point is we're all supposed to be motivated by getting to the top, and success is becoming more senior. And we are not that simple. Also, work is not that structured. Like, it's not, there aren't that many promotions for everybody. Like, the world of work is not that linear. But to go to the we are not that similar, I think that's a good thing. Like, people are motivated by different things, and by assuming that everybody wants the same thing from work, I think we do a big disservice to people and their development. And what actually happens is people feel forced to follow in other people's footsteps because that's the right thing to do. They feel that they have to conform to one version of success, and they lose confidence when their career development doesn't look like that because they think they're doing it wrong. And maybe they're just working in a place where that type of progression isn't possible right now because there's a recession or a restructure or whatever it is, or it's a flatter place. And that's not their fault at all. It's just not part of that organisational context. Or maybe they don't want to become more senior. I speak to so many people who don't want to become more senior, and that should be fine. What we don't want you to do is stagnate. So you can't just sit and wait and, hunker down with your development. Like, you do need to create opportunities. You do need to invest in your skills, or you're going to become quite vulnerable in a squiggly career where if everything's changing around you, you do need to change with it too. But that change does not need to look like everybody becoming more senior. And so this point around personalizing progression is, I think we have to help managers to have conversations which start with, what does progression mean to you? And for some people, they might say, do you know what, at the moment, balance is what matters to me. I want to find work-life fit because I've got a young child, I've got a lot going on over the next 12 months. To be honest, I would like to make an impact in my role, but also, make my role fit with what I'm doing outside of work. And that should be fine too. And so it's how managers help take a more individual approach to people's progression rather than assuming that promotion is the right thing for everyone.
Yeah, I love that you said it's not for everyone to become more senior. I'm sure you've met folks who have climbed that ladder, become senior, and perhaps went, oh, I don't want this anymore, and step back. I know a handful of people who said, who have told me they've moved from a people management position and then decided to move back to an individual contributor role. They enjoyed it, but it wasn't for them, and they stepped back from people management responsibilities. What sort of, Helen, I'm so curious, like, what sort of, I'd written down as you were sharing that around individual sort of progression paths for people. What sort of other motivators are there?
Well, I mean, purpose comes up an awful lot. I think that the problem with purpose is sometimes you create loads of pressure around purpose. We've gone from promotions to purpose. Like, I need to find a job that fulfills all of the meaning in my life. And so I don't think we should just replace one sort of pressured with another one. But I think for some people, it is about the meaning that they get from their work. Feeling like they're working for an organisation that is having a positive social impact and that they are contributing to that positive social impact. So that can feel like a much more positive way for some people to be spending their time. For other people, it's more relational. Like, I want to do a job where I'm learning and working with my colleagues. Like, the focus is more about their connection, particularly I think in the way that work has evolved sort of post-pandemic, is that for a lot of people, the work has moved more hybrid, but for some people, they miss the community and the connection that happened more directly when they were in an office. But for some people, that's quite a big motivator right now. Can I do a job where there's a greater sense of connection and community? And so I would probably say the purpose, social impact and sustainability are definitely spiking. So that's definitely ways, particularly for, I've done some research recently with LinkedIn. So particularly for earlier in the workforce entrance, sustainability and social impact are big drivers for their engagement. And so I think organisations need to unlock these opportunities so that people can find their meaning and motivation in different places.
Yeah, it kind of connects, doesn't it? That if that's something you care deeply about, finding that connection to purpose, and also people, right? Having the right people, because there's a shared sense perhaps of values. The two things that came to mind there as I was asking that question around motivation and people being motivated by different things, perhaps that will inform how they want to grow their career. One thing we talk about, and this comes from work that we do with Google for Startups, and friends of mine, Martin and Josh, who've done research in this area of effective founders and leading teams and relationships. They talk about head, heart, wallet as 3 ways to understand different motivators, right? Some people are motivated by their head, i.e. maybe the intellectual problem they're trying to solve or whatnot. Their heart, maybe they care deeply about a specific purpose, just to tie back to that language. And then there are others that are maybe at a certain stage are really motivated by the wallet aspect, what financial gains they can take in their career. Quite like that as a head, heart, wallet. It's easy to remember. Is that sticky?
It is. The only one thing I would say around money is I think it is important to understand the motivation behind the money and never to judge it. Never to judge it, because for some people, money is about security, right? My costs are rising. The reason I want to go for that new job is because I need more money, and that's about sort of, security, stability, financial stability. For some people, it's about status. Like, I associate it with impact, and I want that job. I want that money because that's important to me. For some people, it's about freedom. Like for me, it's always about freedom. Now, the reason I say that is important is sometimes more pay isn't possible. It just isn't. It just isn't, because of where the company's at, what's going. It's just not possible. And if you understand the motivation behind the money, sometimes you can find more ways to fulfill it. And I'm not trying to take away that money is important to people, because it definitely is. But if you can understand the motive, so for example, let's say I work for you, no pay rise on the agenda at all for us, but you can help me in other ways. Because if you knew that freedom was the motivation behind money, then find me more freedom. You're going to keep me more engaged by going, okay, Helen, I can't do this, but I know that what you really want is freedom. So how about we look at reshaping your working week so that you've got more time to work on that thing that matters to you. And suddenly you haven't given me the thing that I said that I wanted, but really the deeper motivation behind it, you've enabled.
I love that. I couldn't agree more with that. Yes, going a level deeper, and it almost ties back to your first point. Ask questions, understand what's behind the motivation. I think that's spot on. And coincidentally, you talked about something I had written down also for motivation that has come up in conversations that I've had, both with leaders, but also different teams, around the emphasis on flexibility around when I work more than where I work. That seems to be a changing shift, that people are not only happy to have the choice of, well, I'm going to choose to work at home or I'm going to choose to go to the office. There's actually a growing, what I'm seeing, I'm curious what you've seen, but growing emphasis on, I need to know when I can work, or I need to have freedom or choice around when I work. Is that something you're coming across?
Yeah, and also directly, like we have a team. I am a manager. I'm sure there's definitely things that I could do to improve being a manager. But Sarah recently was reflecting. So she's my business partner, and she regularly does walk and talks with the people that work in Amazing If. So they both get on the phone from their respective locations, and they'll have a walk and talk. And Sarah will just listen to what's going on for them at work right now. And one of the reflections she played back to me was in terms of sort of what's working well, which is a question we ask regularly. It's actually a really good coaching question for managers to start asking, what's working well at the moment. What she reflected back to me was that a lot of the team focused on the how of their work and not the what. So it wasn't what's working well is this particular project that I'm doing or this particular process I've put in place. It was what's working well was the way I'm working is giving me more flexibility to manage my family. I was feeling a bit tough, but the way that this company operates means that I can take a bit of time back to make it work for me. And so it was all about the how. It was all about the flexibility. And it's just so interesting that if you give people the freedom and the flexibility, then what they're working on, it becomes less of a focus. Like it's almost like they're willing to work on lots of different things because you're giving them that freedom and flexibility that's so important.
Absolutely. Well, look, we're moving on to your third and final point, which is around empowering others to squiggle and stay, which I just love the language. Squiggle, but stay as well.
Well, I think this is the big risk with Squiggly. I hear it all the time. Like people think sometimes we talk about Squiggly, we're talking about people moving around from company to company. And I mean, if that's what one individual wants to do, then no judgment on that. But that's not what I'm saying is Squiggly means for everybody. And there's a really big issue that organizations need to address, which is the amount of people that are leaving right now. And it's really significant. Organizations are leaking lots of brilliant people because they are looking for development that they're not getting in their current company. Yep. And Sarah and I have written about this, that we did a whole article for Harvard Business Review on reimagining retention. And in the research that we did for that article, there are basically 3 reasons why people are finding it easier to leave than to stay. The first reason is a lack of awareness of internal opportunities. So you can't be what you can't see. So if I only see the jobs that are in my department, then I'm not necessarily going to go to a different place. The second is access. So even if I can see it, there are so many hurdles that companies put in place, like it's got to be this time of year, you've got to have had this performance rating, you need to have done this before you can do that. Like you just made it too hard for me when I can just apply for something else over there. And then the third is advocacy. No one is supporting me to make that move that feels motivating. I feel like I'm doing it on my own. And when there's no awareness, access is too hard and no one's advocating for me, it's just easier to leave. I'll just look on LinkedIn and apply for that job. And so if organizations can address those problems, they can start to reimagine retention. And one of the ways that we can do this is by creating more internal squiggly career opportunities. So instead of it just being about promotions, let's unlock new progression in companies. And we're doing a massive experiment at the moment to sort of see, well, practically what could this be and what works and how can we prove it? I've got like 22 companies working on this all over the world at the moment. It's really exciting. But it includes things like, we call it squiggly career safaris. The companies can call it what they want, but squiggly career safaris are where I get given time, like a day, a quarter, to spend in a different department. And so I can do a little safari around the company just so I can see, well, what does procurement do? What is it actually like to work in accounting? Do they need the skills that I want to be known for? Like beyond the job title, what talents does that job need? Or we're doing squiggly secondments where you and I could swap roles basically with each other for a month so that my manager isn't without a resource. They get you and I get to go what you were doing and we both get to learn and we go back. But we've sort of understood a bit more, we've stretched our strengths, we've built our relationships, and that might help us to see different things that we could do then in the future. And I think the more we unlock these internal progression possibilities, the more we help people to get the squiggliness I know they're looking for, but within the organisation rather than looking to leave because it seems easier to do.
Yeah, it's a win-win, Helen. Everyone, the organization's winning. They're sharing more of their talent. They're retaining their talent. Everyone, as you say, I love this idea. And in my former, you used to call it a bungee. You go and you come back. I love the idea, as you say, you go and you learn something and you bring it back to your team, and everyone's absolutely better off for it. I really like that idea.
If that was happening more in organizations, we would be keeping more people in companies, definitely.
Oh, well, you've led this on wonderfully to our final question, so I can let you get on with the rest of your day because this has been fantastic. So how would the world change, Helen, if we implemented these 3 points that you've shared with us today? And you kind of started there and dipped your toe in.
Well, I'm trying to make squiggly careers better for everybody, which I think, and we don't often talk about this, but I think that makes people's lives better. And we don't talk about lives because I think I feel like I'm it sounds too grandiose, but I do believe it. So the only thing that we do more than work in our life is sleep. Okay. So, and I'm not a sleep coach, I'm a work coach, but I think if you help people with their careers, then you are helping people with their lives. You are giving them more confidence and control over the thing that they will spend most of their waking hours doing. And I think that makes a big difference. So I honestly believe that the impact that we can have on a world is really significant by helping people to have careers as individual as they are and giving them more confidence and control over their future. Like big positive changes happen when you do that stuff.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Absolutely. And it does. You're totally right. I never thought about it like that. The only other thing that we do more than work is to sleep. So thanks for highlighting that. I probably need to get more sleep. But anyway, you're not the sleep
That's the
coach.
next podcast. Go speak to someone about sleep.
Or your next book. But listen, Helen, I know we're at time. I just want to say a huge thank you for joining us on the 3 Point Podcast. It's been amazing.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely to talk to you. You and your curious mind.